Hi, I'm Ed Highland at the MD&M West News Desk, and I'm joined now by Daphne Allen, who is the editor-in-chief of MD+DI. Welcome so much to the show.
Thank you, Ed.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that as editor-in-chief of MD+DI, you've really got the pulse on medtech. Give us an idea what's trending right now. What are people really interested in asking you about?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. So MDDI stands for Medical Device and Diagnostic Industry. So really what we do is we cover medical device manufacturing, diagnostics manufacturing, everything that you need to take a device from the concept or design stage through development, manufacturing, marketing, regulatory process.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure, and so it's a regulated industry that our audience is in, and they're always really interested in finding out what's the latest with FDA, right? And there's been certainly a lot of talk about FDA in the last year and a half with emergency use authorizations and how the regulatory approval process goes. And also another bit of news in the medical device world is the European Union's new medical device regulation just took effect in May, this past May, after a year's postponement because of the pandemic. So our audience is really interested in finding out what the latest is in regulation, and really a lot of the new regulatory changes, it's all about risk management, trying to find out what risks are involved in not only the manufacturing process, but the use of the product in the field. So there's a lot of questions about that. There's also been some ISO standards that pertain to medical device regulation, and those have gone through recent revisions as well. So our audience, not only are they looking to us to provide some information about these changing regulations and standards, but they're also looking for supplier partners, service partners in the industry, at this show, who are well versed in those regulations and standards to help them.
I would imagine the regulations, some of the changes, and the fact that some of the supply lines are getting crunched these days will affect the growth areas. What are some of the growth areas right now? Where do you see this all evolving, say, over the next months and year?
Well, one of the long-standing trends in healthcare is, a minimally invasive procedure for the patient. And that can range from a surgery, to outpatient patient procedures, anything that's less impact to the patient. And a lot of medical device trends and accomplishments are really helping to drive that minimally invasive procedure. And those involve trends like miniaturization, smaller devices, more compact devices. Certainly anything in surgical robotics, that is helping drive some minimally invasive surgeries. Also sensor-enabled devices, or sensor-embedded devices, wearables, and then even to some extent, artificial intelligence and 3D printing are playing a role in, just a minimally invasive procedure, something that might be shorter, faster, less impact to the patient. And what that translates, hopefully, the aim is, there's less impact to the patient, but also faster procedure, perhaps a shorter hospital stay, and ultimately the goal would be to help drive down healthcare costs as well.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the pandemic and how it's affected things, and in particular telehealth. I mean, telehealth has been around for a long time, but how did it affect the future of telehealth? What do you see now on the horizon for something I utilized? It was a lifesaver for me last year.
Right. Oh no, certainly telehealth has played a significant role during the pandemic, helping patients keep in touch with their physicians, when they're staying safe at home. I mean, I know I used it, my family used it. It certainly was a way to connect to the patient, literally. And I think there was a lot of lessons to be learned in the technology, patient and clinician comfort. And for everything I've heard reported, the current administration is looking at some of those lessons to see, how they can be, what the future could be for telehealth, in terms of reimbursement, and having that ongoing availability and access. And one thing I think is important is that connected, aspect of keeping the patient. One of the biggest challenges in healthcare is keeping a patient compliant, right, with any sort of treatment or regimen or lifestyle, that impacts their health. And I personally think that telehealth can keep that patient more connected, to their healthcare partners, and may eventually help them have a better outcome, whatever the case is. And I think it also helps improve access, for people who may be homebound anyway, not only for the pandemic, but for chronic other conditions. It keeps the patient connected. So I really hope it continues. I think there may be a need for some medical devices that may have been used by a professional that are now being used more in the home. Some of those may need to evolve a little bit more, to be more user-friendly for the patient, because now the patient is, taking care of themselves.
Well, that dovetails really into wearables. And so everything regarding telehealth, one of the complaints, if you will, oh, well, I can't get my blood pressure taken, I can't get my temperature taken. Well, now you can if you have a wearable, if there are other devices that are user-friendly. So tell us a little bit about what you see as the future and how you can avoid or not avoid, what potential there is for wearables.
Right. Well, I'm really excited about wearables. There's some really well-known wearables now. The continuous glucose monitors, for instance. Abbott Freestyle Libre, the Dexcom G7. These wearable devices have really made diabetes management so much easier for these patients. And I think, that sort of comfort and maybe wide availability, you see more people with medical wearables. It makes patients and consumers feel a little bit more comfortable about a wearable, right? I also, I look at things, there was a commercial for the new Neulasta Onpro, I think it is the name of the drug. It's a drug that's used the day after chemotherapy. And in that ad, they're actually saying how just the use of that wearable drug delivery, it's an on-body injector, it's giving the patient a day back, right? They don't have to go back to the doctor. And I thought that was so compelling because it's showing like, hey, we're helping, you go through a hard time to get your life back through this wearable. And I think that convenience, that independence, if you will, that the patient has a little bit more of a participation in their healthcare through that wearable gives them a little bit more, hopefully, confidence. And so I just see incredible opportunity for wearables. In the pandemic, we did see some wearables being put to use. I think there's one, it's called a Bio Sticker by BioIntelliSense, and it was used to monitor vital signs for patients suffering from COVID. And so I think opportunities to help use technology to help the patients where they are, right, is such an incredible gift that wearables could give. So I'm really hopeful that we'll see even more interesting wearables in the healthcare space.
It's got a little bit beyond the Apple Watch kind of thing as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Medical Design Excellence Awards. They were held virtually in May, which you were hosting at that time. And what the finalists, what kind of things were the finalists and the winners doing, and kind of who impressed you the most, do you think?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was really excited. I mean, we have been holding the Medical Design Excellence Awards for more than 20 years. And this year we did have a virtual ceremony for our webinar series. And we recognized more than 30 products in, I think, 11 categories. And we're honoring them here at the show as well. And I think the exciting thing is that you see some of the trends that we've been tracking in these winners. Namely, if we go back to that idea of that minimally invasive procedure, there was the Da Vinci single port robotically assisted system for minimally invasive surgery was a winner in the ER and OR tools category. In the implant category, we had it is the NALU implantable neurostimulator device for chronic pain, and it was meant to be a minimally invasive device. And then also there was a minimally invasive glaucoma surgical device from Ivantis called the Hydro Microstent. So again, another miniaturized device. But our Best in Show winner was also really a standout. It was Medtronic's, it was the Link 2 device, cardiac device, and the benefit there is, again, a minimally invasive procedure, but also for long-term monitoring, remote programming, again, enabling less impact to the patient.
Wanted to talk a little bit, you've touched on it a little bit already, about the diagnostics market and such, and it's been in the spotlight because of the pandemic. What do you see with IVD, say, over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, the IVD companies, they played an incredible role in responding to the pandemic. I mentioned the emergency use authorizations earlier. I think there was nearly 400, just under 400, emergency use authorizations for diagnostic tests for COVID-19. And that's incredible if you think about, the amount of time that's went from, the discovery of the virus to being able to diagnose it. And then we now suddenly have 300, 400 EUAs. It's pretty incredible the amount of work that these diagnostic manufacturers went through, as well as the regulators who helped bring these things to market through the emergency use authorization. So I think there's an incredible amount of learning that took place there. Not only in the science, in bringing those assays to market for detecting the virus and antigens, but also the amount of work in scaling up manufacturing and all the supplies that were needed, and bringing that not only through the manufacturing and logistic process, but to the field, to products that could be used, and not just at hospitals and laboratories, but at the point of care, or even in the field. People getting real-time or 15-minute tests and over-the-counter tests. I think there's been an incredible amount of work that's been done in manufacturing and the regulatory process, and I think a lot of learnings that can be applied, for future needs, for future infectious disease detection needs that could be, could come about.
Do you think we'll ever see this kind of volume again? I mean, there was such a rush to make the COVID test, to make all the diagnostics, to come up with vaccines, and obviously a lot of it was backed by government funding. And so hopefully we won't have another pandemic or other emergency situation like that. But did it open a door? Did it open some eyes and minds to the idea of, hey, why don't we fast track some of these things? Maybe something for cancer, maybe something for other illnesses. Just from your perspective, do you see that in the future? Or do you see this as a one-off, a once in a lifetime, hopefully no more pandemic kind of situation?
Well, I hope there's not another pandemic too, but I think, like I said, it's a regulated industry, and there's a number of steps that companies need to go through to prove that their products are safe and effective. And there's different categories of FDA approval, authorization, clearance, and all that's based on risk, right? And and whether the use outweighs the benefits of the use outweighs any of the risks. And I think in this case, with the emergency, it was critical to get something to market that could be used, right? And so that's where the emergency use authorization came about. And my understanding is that those EUAs are in effect, through the end of the emergency. And I think what our industry is looking at now is, okay, what's the next step for these products? And basically it's, what data has been produced over this year and a half using some of these products. Will that data support, some of the more traditional FDA approval or clearance, and even other regulators? And so I think there's that approach now to look at, okay, yes, it was a fast track for this emergency. Is there anything that we've learned in terms of communication, regulators and manufacturers and scientists working together? I think there's always learnings to be made from that, but there's always that, traditional, what data do I need to collect? Can I prove safety and efficacy? And FDA and other regulators have to, abide by, that process in play. So it's hard to say if the regulatory process will shorten because of this. I think some of the lessons learned in better communication, better partnership, if you will, about, regulators and manufacturers working together. I think those are places where there could be, some learnings on how to expedite, that communication.
Sure. Wanted to put you on the spot just as a final wrap up here and talk a little bit about like who's the star right now, who's glowing, whether it be a product or a person or both, that you see really as kind of being the big influencer right now in the market.
Well, I mentioned Medtronic winning Best in Show of our Medical Design Excellence Awards this year for their Link 2 product, but they also were our Reader's Choice winner. So our readers vote on their favorite MDEA finalist, and they won for the CareLink SmartSync device. And basically what it is it enables clinicians who usually program devices, like implanted cardiac devices. They would wheel a console in and, something, I don't even know, just wheel it in and bring it physically to the patient and do whatever they need to do to program that device. Well, this new product, the CareLink SmartSync, it enables them with the use of a tablet that they can just carry in and program the product for the patient there. They could even do it remotely, which, as we've learned over the past year and a half, remote monitoring and programming has certainly played a role. So our readers really felt it was a game changer because it's literally changing the tools they're using. So, Medtronic, with those two recognitions in our Medical Design Excellence Award this year, is certainly a standout. And, large companies like Medtronic certainly help play a role in setting, some of the standards in healthcare. But there's also a tremendous amount of smaller companies that also, too, help change things in healthcare and the state of the medical device industry. And we've actually at some of our shows have had some startup showcases, where you have innovators with ideas to either update a medical device or devise something new. We've even seen entrepreneurial physicians and surgeons realizing, hey, you know what, I use this tool every day, I have an idea too. And so that's the beauty of the medical device industry, is we certainly have a range of players, from large companies all the way down to a surgeon with a great idea. And so it's exciting to be in this world to cover it.
Well, when great minds get together, some great ideas can develop as well. And I'm sure you'll keep us updated with MD and DI and let us know what's happening. As Editor-in-Chief, Daphne Allen, thank you so much for joining us at the News Desk.
Thank you, Ed.